The UFC flyweight division might have a new GOAT, but it also has a new challenger, as the UFC 317 showed us that maybe that challenger could be his toughest yet. Let's break it down, coming off of what was just a fantastic weekend for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. The UFC needed a weekend like this in a real bad way, as UFC 317 on International Fight Week delivered and then some. We have been critical about the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and in a number of different senses. This one they delivered on. Now, just a quick note, if you're looking for an Ilya Topuria breakdown, I did that video already. It is in a different spot, so if you're watching this later, it is going to be there. But watch to the end of this one, because we got good breakdowns of the two big flyweight stories that came from UFC 317, as Alexandre Pantoja does it again. A third-round submission win over Kai Kara-France sets the record in the flyweight division for most sub finishes, most subs, most finishes, and most wins in UFC flyweight history. He is just so far ahead of everyone in this division right now. And I said it in the previews leading up to it. I don't think there is anyone in the UFC who is further ahead of their challengers than Pantoja is right now. He is just on another level, and that was on display here as he whooped that ass of Kai Kara-France up and down Las Vegas on Saturday night. I also think you can now at least start the conversation of him closing in on Demetrious Johnson. Now, it is easy to get caught up in the records and everything like that because, okay, well, he's past DJ, and he maybe has a bit of a further step ahead on these guys than Demetrious Johnson even had. And DJ, like, this is the closest anyone has come to this level of dominance since DJ, and no one has come close. I do think, on sober second look, now that we've had a couple days to just cleansing deep breaths and all of that, it's still DJ. It is not Pantoja yet. Could he get there? I don't know. I don't know if that competition is coming. I mean, we'll talk about the competition that's coming in a second, and maybe this helps. But I still think when you look at the quality of the fighters that Demetrious Johnson beat, and put it side by side against Pantoja, that there isn't a Benavidez on that resume for Pantoja. There isn't a Cejudo on the resume for Pantoja. There isn't those high level of guys. He's beating all the challengers. Like all he is doing is all he can do at this point. Like, none of this is a criticism of him. It is tough to put him over Demetrious Johnson at this point when you look at the quality of the competition that they faced. Now, maybe the volume will just get so overwhelming at some point, but in terms of this division, it is tough to make a case that it is not DJ right now. But there is no chance that anyone else is a close second at this point at flyweight to Pantoja. Excellent work for him. On the other side, Kai Kara-France, this is a tough one. It feels like it was too much too soon after a couple of losses, and just kind of shows where the division is at in terms of challengers, because he gets this because he beat a guy who was the number one contender, who shouldn't have been the number one contender. And so we talked about it last week, where it's just this domino of, well, we don't really have challengers, so we'll put this guy in. Oh, well, turns out he wasn't a challenger. But then he lost to another guy, and they go, well, look at this, he was a title challenger. It's like, yes, but, and now, you have to keep your champion, especially one this good, as active as possible. And I think it was great to give him this kind of a showcase on International Fight Week, but it was so clear that Pantoja was miles ahead of Kai Kara-France. So, I don't think this is the end of the line for KKF in the same way I think it is for Oliveira, but I think that he really is hoping. I was going to say he's hoping that Van can beat him, and we'll talk about Van in a second. But even then, like, I think he is obviously, like, he is not on the level of Pantoja. And so, like, that is proven, and they're not going to get another rematch. There's no way you run this back and think, oh, well, now he's got him, unless, like, Pantoja has something amputated. But if he loses, it's to Van, and either Pantoja gets an immediate rematch, or Royval is getting that match, because who wouldn't want to see that again? So it's going to be a bit before KKF can work his way back into that championship picture. We will talk about the new exciting challenger at 125 pounds in just a second, but I do want to remind you that our next stream on twitch.tv/primetimepk is going to come up tomorrow at 10 a.m. Still deciding if it's a video game stream or a podcast stream. It'll probably end up being a video game one where we talk about stuff we would on the podcast anyway, just while I'm playing video games. So that is probably what it is going to end up being. But the big standout from UFC 317, no one's stock rose more than Joshua Van. I said, regardless of outcome, when we did the preview this week, that this should be a one-off and he should get back into the regular prospect progression. That goes out the window when you have a fight of the year contender and you win. It really does feel like Van showed a lot that shows he is ready for this. Do I think he should be favored against Pantoja? I absolutely do not. Do I think he beats Pantoja? I absolutely do not. Do I think he has earned the opportunity to see how close he actually is? I absolutely do. Based off of that showing against the guy who probably, if we were to just stack it up, is probably the second best fighter in this division right now, to have that type of a performance, to go 3 rounds, to dig deep and have that kind of a win is absolutely incredible. So I think you have to get caught up in it all. I think you have to showcase what this kid is and build off of the momentum here. I would do a 30-minute UFC special with this fight and with the Topuria fight. You know what? Pantoja one as well. Let's just a full hour coming up on ESPN on whatever day. Let's throw these 3 fights on there and showcase the stars that we have in this, coming out of this one, because all 3 who picked up wins in the top 3 deserve to have that spotlight and deserve to have this showcase. And so I think you have to build on it with Van and what he is doing coming off of that. And so they bring him in as the number 1 contender after the fight with after Pantoja's fight. It seems like it's the move. On Friday we talked about John Jones's meteoric rise. Sometimes you just have something special and you have to capitalize on it. I don't think that we're talking about the next John Jones, but I do not know how you look at this kid in the eye. I don't know how you go to the UFC public and say, okay, look, he just had a fight of the year contender against a very high up challenger who was probably next if he would have won this fight to challenge for the title. And yes, he had an amazing fight and he won that. But he's going to get the number 13th ranked fighter in this division coming up next. I don't know how you can do that. So I think that this kid made himself undeniable and did an excellent job of earning a title shot off of it. And honestly, Royval should not take much of a step back coming off of this. These two combined for the most significant strikes in flyweight history. Royval outlanded Van in the last 2 rounds, but gets dropped in the last 10 seconds. He has to be hoping that Van gets the win over Pantoja, because I would assume he gets a win in his next fight. He is next in line for a title shot against Van if Van is able to pull that off. And look, even if Van loses, you can just run this one back and have a whole lot of fun. Royval has kept himself relevant even in what is a surprising defeat. This is the type of performance that people get excited about a couple of fighters for. And this is the type of performance where if the UFC still had their fastball, they would be able to capitalize on this immensely. Like I said, I would put all 3 of these fights up for free on YouTube. I would have this fight have a UFC 317 special on ESPN, and wherever I land in my TV deal, I'm throwing up, if it's Netflix, if it's Amazon, if it's still ESPN, whatever, I am making sure as many eyeballs see these fights as possible, and these guys get in front of as many people as we can get them in front of, so we can build off of these stars that these guys seem to be coming out of UFC 317.